Nick is an adventurer who is an excellent swordsman with a great life and an amazing team, which he believes can make it to the top of the rankings in no time. Unlike all of you, he has a foster father named Argas, as well as a girlfriend, who isn't imaginary like mine. His life seems to be going good when one day Argas called him and told him that he doesn't want him in their party anymore and that he should leave the party immediately and find some other party that he can fit in better. This completely blindsides him as Argas took him in when he was just an orphan child and raised him as a father, who he always looked up to. Later that day, he meets his totally real girlfriend in a tavern where he tells her all about this, expecting a loving hand on his head and some well-deserved sympathy, but all he gets is a snarky remark about how he's pretty useless now. And even his totally real girlfriend dumps him without a second thought. After being heartbroken twice on the same day, he sits on a fountain, thinking about how his life is overturned in just a matter of seconds when suddenly, a blue-haired girl with an umbrella approaches him. He at first shoos her away, but then she hands him a ticket and tells him that her name is Agate, and she's an upcoming idol who has a show tonight. With that, she turns around and leaves while Nick tells her that he won't be attending it. After getting heartbroken, men only have two pathways. Either they become chads who hit the gym while wearing a sweatshirt, or they become an incel, who will never even smell girls again. Nick decides to take the second path and goes to her concert, becoming a total simp and an incel, buying all of her merchandise before coming back home for a nap. The next day, he decides to go and find work at the Adventurers Guild once again, because he needs money to spend on merch. He goes over to the guild to find any party that would accommodate him, but it seems like everyone has their party full by now. He spots a blonde guy standing near the notice board all alone, so he decides to try and ask him if he wants to be the part of a party, but gets scared at the last moment and the blondie ends up joining a different party. He decides that he can't deal with this crap, so he goes out to a tavern for an early drink or two. He sits down alone at a table, eating flavorless food while parties around him enjoy each other's company and food which is enriched by interesting conversations. Suddenly, a waiter tells him that he will have to share the table, as they don't have many tables left and 3 more adventurers sit at the table one after the other. One of them seems to be a bratty rich kid who is wearing a garb adorned by jewels, which makes Nick realize that she is from a noble family and gets confused as to why she might be here. The second guy seems to be already drunk, who also sat with them. Nick marks that he doesn't have the medal of a cleric, which means that he was fired from a guild as well, which is pretty surprising as usually medics are always needed in a party. The third girl is a half-dragon woman who seems to be battle-scarred all over her body, and despite looking like she has been to countless battles, she seems to be scared. Suddenly, a drunk man stumbles near the rich bratty girl and asks her whether she would want to be in her team, but she just looks at him with a ferocious gaze, scaring him away. Finally, the booze arrives, and after drinking that, they all end up yelling that trust is for losers. They look at each other and realize that they are all similar in some way or the other, so they end up sharing their stories. The rich bratty girl goes first and introduces herself as Tiana, who is from a noble family and was the top student of the most prestigious magic school in this country. She was the best at her craft, and all the teachers praised her for her incredible magic abilities. One day, she went back to the cafeteria to find her slimy fiance sitting with another woman. She sat down in front of him and without any judgment started telling him about how her day was and how she was able to perform a very strong magic. The fiancé, however, seems to be done with her crap as he feels small compared to Tiana and feels like he gets easily overshadowed by her. The other girl also ends up lying about how Tiana bullies people who are not nobles and how she also provides after-school handies to teachers for better grades. Her fiancé doesn't even try to confirm it and straight up breaks up with her, telling her that he doesn't want to be with her anymore. Heartbroken, she goes back to her father and asks permission to leave the school in the city. She arrives in the current city and rents a small apartment, which looks much better than mine to be honest. She tried going to several owners and craftsmen for jobs, but all of them rejected her because she didn't complete her degree or because she was a noblewoman who everyone thought would be real bratty. After getting rejected from every job, she ends up doing what everyone does and goes off to gamble at a dragon race. She ends up winning the first round, and that makes her gamble even more, till she ends up losing everything that she had. She contemplated how she will ever pay her rent in an incredibly pretty-looking bathroom, before deciding to try and join a party so that she can adventure. She looks at a notice board, but as soon as anyone tries to approach her, she ends up scaring them away because of her resting bitch face. After getting tired of life, she ended up coming to the tavern to drink her misery. The priest introduces himself as Zem, who used to be a very celebrated healer in his small town, where he created a bunch of medicine all on his own, saving people from illnesses that no other doctor can save them from. He explains that he used to take help from a girl who he knew since she was a child, and considering her aptitude and the ability to learn things quickly, She became a regular helper to him, as she brought in the herbs and the roots that he needed from the forest for his medicine. He was very gentle and paid her good money for her work, but one night she made a suspiciously late delivery and ended up asking the priest on a date. This intelligent creature replied that he can't date her because he is a priest, instead of telling her that she is too young to be dating anyone. Anyways, the girl gets heartbroken and ends up running out of his house crying and cursing at him. The next morning, he is healing an older woman like he usually does when suddenly a bunch of priests enter his chambers alongside a crying girl. The girl turns out to be his helper, and he immediately tries to reach her asking what happened to her and whether she is fine. The girl, however, turns out to be a total bitch and falsely accuses him for harassment, taking a page from the Me Too movement. The priest is immediately taken to the cells, where he is locked up without a trial, given basic food, and no way to interact with anyone. 3 months later, he is taken out of the jail and exiled from his hometown forever, while being paraded through the streets like Cersei Lannister. He keeps walking and arrives at another town, where he visits a rundown tavern with no customers. He meets a very beautiful olive-skinned lady who greets him with a smile and asks him whether he wants something to drink. He smiles back at her and notices that she seems to have back pain, so asks her whether her back is alright. She replies that it has been giving her some troubles from the past few days, and moved by her kind personality, he offers his services to her. That night, he heals her with his magic massage apparently, and the next morning her pain is gone. She tells him that he is a very kind person and not a bad human being. She also suggests that he should go out to the adventurer's city and join a party over there so he can also earn his living like a dignified and upstanding human being. She also brings out a bag which is filled with a bunch of clothing items, a magic book, and a weapon, which she offers to him, informing him that it belonged to her when she used to be an adventurer, but now her days are over. After that, Zem came straight to this tavern to have some more to drink, as that's the only way he knows how to heal himself. The Dragon Girl's turn comes next, and she introduces herself as Curran, but blueballs everyone by just saying that something was stolen from her, and doesn't elaborate. Noon pushes her for more information as they simply drink till they get blacked out drunk. The next morning, they wake up in Tiana's room, who tells them to get out as she needs to get ready. Everyone leaves the tavern and we're about to go their separate ways when Nick realizes that this is an opportunity given by God, and he asks everyone to make a party with him as they have all been betrayed, but they don't have enough money to scrape by, and they are not even being picked up by any parties, so they should create a party amongst themselves and go adventuring to gain enough money to stabilize them. They all immediately hook on to the plan and go to the Adventurers Guild to register themselves. The old receptionist looks at them and notices that Nick is the primary offensive player of a well-known party, and Curran is the only person in history who was able to come back from the GLevel dungeon alive while being all alone. She asks them what their name will be, and Nick replies that they will be known as the Survivors. That night, they all sit down while Nick tells them that they all have been betrayed, so he would like to set some rules. The first one being that no one interferes with the others' lives and should mind their own business. Secondly, they will equally keep an eye on the money, making sure that it's not entrusted to just one person. Third, and most important of all, that no matter what, they will survive each and every day. The next morning, they begin by starting to explore the GLevel Dungeons, which are very easy, but they have to finish the boss to get promoted to the next level. Because Zem and Tiana have never been in an actual battle, Nick teaches them the ropes of how to deal with monsters. He shows them a slime monster and tells them that these are the bitches of the dungeon, as all they have to do to kill it is to take out its core. He also tells them to make sure they save the core as they can sell it in the market. Everything seems to be going fine as they make conversation and laugh alongside each other when they finally reach the next floor where everyone is taking out these cores. Tiana tells them that this is very easy, and even she can fight stronger opponents as she has defeated goblins and even an orc. Just then, she ends up slipping on a slime while another one latches onto her face. She takes them out while Nick laughs, telling her to be more careful. Tiana, however, overreacts and out of irritation, tries to shoot the slime with her ice magic attack, but ends up engaging in a little bit of friendly fire. Thankfully, Curran is an experienced adventurer and blocks her magic with her sword, but the vibe changes as Tiana tries to apologize, but Curran flies off the handle, telling her that she tried to trust her, but this is what she is doing the very first day. They stay at odds with each other for the rest of the time and finally are able to reach the top floor. While walking, Zem comments about the huge pink slime ahead, and Nick replies that's the boss slime that they have to defeat. Without a second though, Tiana the giant idiot ends up rushing towards the boss and uses a powerful ice magic on it. The icicle freezes the slime, but just when she thought she won, the slime explodes, drowning them with its goo. They all come out of the dungeons, achieving their objective, but now have to wash the sticky substance off of them. While washing themselves, Nick tells Tiana that she needs to chill out, and asks for advice about the matters that she knows nothing about, and also tells Zem to stay at the last as he has zero offensive capabilities. He realizes that none of them trust each other even a bit, so he starts an exercise with them. He strips down to his pants and lays everything in front of them before explaining that he is a swordsman who is good hand-to-hand combat and small weapons, but can't use magic, can't heal anyone, and neither can he use heavy weapons like Curran. He explains that people are scared if they don't know what the other person can do, but now they know exactly what he can and can't do, which will hopefully result in them trusting him more. Slowly, the priest ends up explaining his powers and weaknesses, telling them that he is good at healing people but has absolutely zero offensive capabilities and can be easily defeated by any kind of magical or physical abilities. Tiana goes next, and in order to show how apologetic she is, she ends up going in front of Curran and tells her that she is good at ice and wind magic, but can also do lightning and earth magic, while her biggest weakness is fire magic and close-quarter combat. She then goes back and sits on her log, shivering after feeling rejected by Curran, but she ends up throwing a fireball near her to start a small fire which can keep her warm. They make up eventually and end up going to the Goblin Forest, where they are attacked by a bunch of goblins. Nick explains that these goblins are not very strong, they attack in groups and can lay traps if the adventurers are not careful. The goblins end up attacking the party, and one of them tries to hit Zem, who is able to block the attack before Nick kills the goblin with a swift slash. He then goes ahead and chops off a bunch of goblins into tiny little pieces before Zem is again saved by Tiana from an attack. They defeat the first wave successfully, while Nick asks Tiana to find where the other goblins are hiding as she has an ability which can detect magic. She tells them that there are around 10 more goblins ahead before getting a bit flustered, as she tells them that she has felt the presence of a goblin, which seems different as it has 5 times the magic as any regular goblin. Nick immediately becomes alert and tells them that it must be an evolved form of goblin, known as a hobgoblin. He tells them that they can be extremely powerful and usually are found on later stages. Zema asks whether they should retreat, but Nick replies that they can't retreat as otherwise the goblins will start attacking the nearby villages. He devises a plan, telling them that the hobgoblins are basically immune to magic, so their best bet is heavy and strong physical attacks which only Curran can deliver. He tells Zem that him and Curran are going to go on the offensive, while his job is to keep buffing them and Tiana will provide cover fire. They all agree with the plan and the battle starts. Both Curran and Nick start running towards the goblins, while Tiana uses her ice shard ability to kill a bunch of them, and Zem keeps buffing them. The hobgoblin calls forth some more hidden goblins, while Nick makes quick work of the ones in front of him. Curran trusts Tiana and keeps running ahead, while Tiana uses her shards to kill the goblins in front of her. Curran makes a beeline for the hobgoblin and delivers a massive fiery sword slash, killing the hobgoblin immediately, while Nick finishes off the rest. They congratulate each other, while Nick explains that they need to extract the horns of the goblins, as they are to be sold in the market. Kura ends up warming up to them and finally reveals her backstory. She tells them that dragon people are always supposed to be working alongside a hero, who they support with all of their life. A man named Kalios was that person for him, who she met recently, but he was always very kind to her, and in return, she was always ready to risk her life for him. One day, he told her that they need to go inside a C-rank dungeon to take care of things, and obviously she agreed quickly. Before going inside the dungeons, however, she ends up putting all her important stuff, including an heirloom pendant that her father gave him inside of a bag for safekeeping. But Kalios comes at the last moment and tells her that they can't really carry that much load and that she should just leave the bag behind. She obviously trusts him and ends up going alongside his 2 crummies deep inside of the dungeon. She ends up killing a bunch of insect monsters while the others simply reap the reward. Later on, Kalios tells her that they have to fight the final boss now, which is a giant snake inside of a pot. He explains that if the snake sees them, it will hide inside of the pot, where they can't hit it with magic attacks, so Kura needs to attack the pot itself, so that it comes out to attack her, and then they will end it. Curran agrees and immediately rushes towards the pot, moving it, which makes the snake monster emerge from the pot and starts attacking her. One of the mages uses a fire attack on the snake, after which the snake starts charging up for a magic attack of its own. She asks Kalios what's happening, but he tells her to keep attacking it, and not worry about it. She believes him yet again and keeps the snake engaged while waiting for Kalios to help her. At the end, the snake ends up capturing her and uses its toxic breath on her, wounding her, as she falls to the ground, barely conscious. She notices Kalios walking up to an exhausted snake as he kills it with his sword, and tells Curran that the snake gets extremely exhausted after using that deadly poison attack, and that they only needed her to do that. They laugh at her, before leaving her to die as they walk outside of the dungeon with all the rewards. She somehow manages to escape the dungeon and crawls her way back to the tavern where they were staying before falling down in front of the main door. Everyone around the area surrounds her and starts asking her questions, as according to them, Kalios told them that Curran died in the dungeon. She asks where he is, but the tavern owner replies that he left the city a while ago. Curran immediately rushes up to her room, where her worst fears come true as she finds her bag, which contained the heirloom pendant, to be missing. She walks out, completely heartbroken, and simply starts wandering around the area looking for any sign of Kalios, but isn't able to find any. One day, he ends up spotting a very famous solo adventurer, and like a total creep, she started following him around at every restaurant and started filling the void created by Kalios by good food. After a while, however, the money ran out, and her primary goal to her life became earning money to get more food, and that's when she met her party. The next day, Nick spends some time with her in the market, eating snacks with her and talking to her about life in general, which makes their trust even stronger. That evening, they go back to the tavern, where a lot more people seem to be recognizing them before the assistant receptionist calls them upstairs, where the old receptionist is waiting for them. She tells them that she has a job for them. She explains that there is a special facility created by a now-lost civilization, which created a sword by using a technology that is lost today. Their job is to recover that sword, for which they would be paid very handsomely. Nick takes all of the details, and the next day they enter the facility, killing the monsters and moving forward. The facility seems to be very technologically advanced for the time, as it has cameras, automatic lights, and everything. They reach an area where a green lamp is lit, but when Nick tries to check it out, the wall gives way and opens up to a giant dark room. They all venture inside of the room, where the lights come on and a voice starts talking to them, congratulating them over their journey till now. They realize that the voices are coming from a broken sword in the middle of the room, but soon realize that this is supposed to be the legendary sword that they were sent to retrieve. They think about it for a while before grabbing the sword, as the sword resists, asking them not to sell it, as it has already been locked inside here, and wants to see some action. Suddenly, a huge explosion occurs, and the sword tells them to get ready, as its guardian, the Golem, has woken up because of this. Through the dust, a giant blob-like creature emerges and starts walking towards them with a mighty growl. Quick to the trigger, Tiana immediately launches a bunch of icicles on the monster, but is able to absorb them, while Curran runs up to the monster to slash it to pieces. The sword shouts at her to back off, but Curran doesn't listen, while the monster ends up shooting the icicles back on her. One of the icicle hits her in the stomach, while the other one hits her on the head, knocking her down. Zem immediately starts healing her, and Nick decides to go in for an attack, realizing that the conditions could become real bad really soon. He tries to cut through the legs, but the Golem immediately regenerates and starts attacking him. Nick shouts at the others to quickly get Curran up and to run towards the door so that they could escape. He keeps dodging the attacks, while the sword strapped to its back screams at him that no ranged attack or sharp weapons can hurt the monster, and that he should use the sword, as that's the only way the Golem can be killed. Nick decides to follow the instructions and grabs the sword, as the bladeless sword immediately emits a bright light and becomes more or less an energy saber. The rest of the party is trying to break through the door, but Tiana reports back that the door is indestructible, and they can't really do anything about it. The Golem attacks him again, but this time he dodges the attack and slashes at the Golem, cutting one of its arms. Shockingly, however, the chopped off part of the Golem makes a life of its own and grabs Nick, while the Golem punches him through the shelves and into a hole on the ground. Tiana immediately uses a freezing spell on the Golem and screams at Curran to find Nick and make sure that he is safe. Thankfully, the freeze spell seems to work, as the Golem gets frozen in place, while Curran runs past it into the hole. Surprisingly, however, the Golem is able to break out of the ice and starts walking towards them. Zem immediately buffs Tiana, while she uses the freeze spell again, trying to buy time for both Curran and Nick to escape. Curran enters the hole and finds Nick buried beneath the rubble, and she immediately starts getting rid of it. Nick tells her to leave him and run away, but she refuses and tells him to shut his mouth, as either they are all getting out of here together, or none of them is. With this, she removes the final stone on Nick and helps him up, as his faith in her becomes even deeper. Suddenly, the sword tells Nick to say a particular spell, while Zem and Tiana are at the end of their ropes, as they don't have any magic power left, while the Golem keeps coming towards them to finish them off. Just when everything seemed lost, however, Nick emerges from the hole and basts the Golem into small pieces. Tiana and Zem are shocked to see that Nick has fused with Curran and become one with a beautiful set of shield and wings. The core of the Golem still seems to be active as it regenerates once again, but Nick is extremely powerful and uses his sword to completely destroy the Golem, leaving its core to fall on the ground. Suddenly, both Curran and Nick separate once again and lay on the ground, breathing hard with the sword in their hands. They are finally able to go back to the guild, where they end up giving a replica sword to the old receptionist lady, as the sword transformed into a little white-haired boy named Kazuna, and he begged them not to sell him into another antique shop. Thankfully, everything ends up working out, and they go back to Tiana's place where they distribute the money equally before going their own ways to spend their leisure time. Nick and the party assemble in a tavern where Nick shows them the amount of money they have got left after they all spent their money. It turns out that they barely have any money even to buy some snacks, which saddens everyone, but Nick gets their hopes up by giving them a pep talk and rallying them to start going to the next dungeon so that they can earn some good money. They enter a dungeon and find an icy lake within which a bunch of creatures are frozen. They also spot a giant ogre sitting on the ice, and they all creep up to a high ground, keeping their voices low and preparing for an ambush. Curran ends up going even more closer to the monster, treating this as some sort of a game, which excites Kazuna, who wants to prove himself, so he simply runs up to the ogre, shouting at it, which kind of destroys the ambush. He takes out his sword as the monster raises its icy club, hitting Kazuna, but thankfully he is able to block the hit with the help of his sword. This surprises everyone, as the ogre seems to be pretty strong, and they didn't expect Kazuna to simply block the attack with his skinny sword. The ogre backs off and shoots an ice blast at him, but Kazuna simply bats it away as if he was playing a game of tennis. He immediately rushes up to the monster and tries to hit it with his sword, but the ogre blocks it with its club. Kazuna simply smiles and uses an amazing ability which makes a clone of himself, and he surrounds the ogre, slashing him from both sides and killing him immediately. They all surround him while Nick comments that he feels a bit tired, even though he didn't do anything. Kazuna replies that it's because he uses Nick's stamina and mana to perform these skills, because they are connected together. They come out of the dungeon, and while Tiana and Zem want to rest, Curran, Kazuna, and Nick are hungry, so they start walking to a nearby food establishment. As soon as Nick looks at the diner they were visiting, his heart dropped as he realized it's the same diner that he and his girlfriend used to come often, and this was the place where she dumped him as well. He tries to talk to the others so that they can go and eat somewhere else, but they are already in, and he is forced to follow. After going inside, they order their food, but Nick seems to be down in the dumps. Suddenly, however, he hears a familiar voice and turns around to see his girlfriend with another young guy sitting on the same seat where she used to sit with him, and notices that the guy seems to be giving her a gift as a birthday gift, while she tells him that she needs to go back to her hometown as her mother is pretty sick, and she is in need for money immediately. The poor naive guy immediately tells her that she needn't worry as he will figure something out. When Nick has had enough, and he goes over to their seat and sits beside the guy, to the horror of his girlfriend Claudine. The poor guy seems to be very confused, while Nick asks the bitch how many times her birthday comes in a year, because a couple months ago she just celebrated her birthday with him, where even he gave her a gift. The guy seems to be extremely confused, while the bitch turns towards him and tells him to piss off. Nick pokes her further by saying that he thought her mother was already dead because she needed money for her funeral a couple of months ago. This aggravates her, and she gets up from her seat and throws the gift at Nick before rushing off. The guy looks at him sadly while Nick tells him not to worry as he dodged a bullet. The next morning, Nick and his party sit around a tavern for some breakfast, when suddenly, a huge tiger guy pours a drink all over him. Nick looks unfazed as he finds out that his girlfriend and a guy have come over here to take their revenge. The tiger tells him that he heard Nick was annoying the Claudine. Nick simply smiles and tells him that he doesn't talk to gold diggers anymore, at which point the tiger guy tells him to settle this outside, and both him and Nick go outside, while he tells his party to stay at the table, as it shouldn't take that long to deal with this girl. He goes outside and they enter a dark alleyway, where Nick gets ready to fight, but the girl immediately starts apologizing and tells him that he's pretty done with Claudine, and is thinking of dropping her off as he has used her enough to earn money. It turns out that the bitch was working with a gang to rip people off. The girl tells him that he thinks Nick is also ripping off the party he is working with currently and asks him to join their gang. This angers Nick, who simply delivers a massive uppercut, which sends the girl flying. The cat immediately gets up and, like a total coward, draws out his mashie, acting like he is from Mexico, before trying to attack Nick. Nick, however, simply dodges his attack before counterattacking him and pinning him on the ground in an arm lock. Suddenly, however, he is blown away by a magic attack on his back as he turns around to spot a nerd in a cloak who seems to be in the cat's team. Before they can attack Nick together, however, Curran arrives and uses her tail to hang the nerd upside down, while Nick simply walks away. The girl tries to attack, but is stopped by the old lady at the guild, who tells him to piss off immediately before she calls the guards. The girl, however, tells her that he's officially challenging Nick to a duel to everyone's surprise. They all go inside, and the girl reveals that they are going to have a mathematic duel in which Nick and girl will fight each other in the ring, while one person from each team will solve mathematic problems. And if they solve faster and get the right answers, their teammate gets a free hit on the other person. This kind of a duel is a pretty new thing to everyone apart from Nick. The old lady brings out a bag in which slips with names of every member of each team is written, so that the people who will solve maths could be chosen. For the girls' team, Claudine is chosen, whereas unfortunately from Nick's team, Curran is chosen, who doesn't even know basic mathematics as she never had to use it. Curran is blown out of her mind and extremely nervous, unable to even say anything because she knows she can't do any math. Later, Zem gives her a practice exam to see what her level is, and turns out that even the most basic mathematic questions are out of her reach, as she is only able to do 20% of them correctly. From the next day, Curran started studying with everyone's help, while Nick sent Zem to drink and collect information on the Tiger Gang. Finally, a day before the final battle, they all assemble at his place, which shockingly looks similar to mine in terms of the untidiness. Anyway, Zem reports back that the Tiger Gang cheats every single time by using magic crystals that let them communicate with each other telepathically. This means that they can easily use the third member as the person who does all the actual calculations and tell their teammates all the answers. Curran is beyond sad, as she is already trash at mathematics, and now with the other team cheating, she feels like there is no way they could win. Nick, however, has a plan which he shares with the rest of the group members, who feel a bit more rejuvenated as they have an effective way of capturing the culprit now. The next day, Nick and the girl stand in the ring while Curran and Claudine sit opposite to each other, ready to solve the questions thrown their way. The battle starts as the old lady delivers the questions to them, while Nick and the girl start testing the waters by throwing some light jabs at each other that hardly connect. Curran looks at the questions and realizes that she has attempted these questions before and happily starts solving them, while the bitch starts telling her that there is no way she can do anything against her. Thankfully, Curran is able to solve the questions before Claudine in the first round, but turns out that she only got 80 questions correct, while the bitch got 98 questions correct, which leads them to lose this round, and the girl gets a free hit on Nick as he punches him straight in the gut, knocking the air out of him. Curran immediately gets very worried, as she believes she is the reason why Nick is getting hit. The next round starts and the question sheet is delivered to them, and the match starts as Nick tries to push the girl to try and gas him out, but the tiger is smart and simply keeps backing off and dodging. The round ends once again with Curran losing to Claudine, resulting in Nick taking another massive punch to the face by the hands of the girl. Curran gets terribly afraid and apologizes to Nick while he starts bleeding and tells her that he believes in her and is totally sure that she will make them win the next round. This gives Curran the required boost as she starts trying to solve math once again. Tiana quickly starts scanning the entire crowd, trying to find out who will help the bitch cheat, only to realize that there is no one using any kind of magic crystals as of now. This makes her realize that the other team thinks that they can easily defeat Curran without cheating, and that's why they are not trying to. If this happens, it will ruin Nick's plan, so they start executing part 2 of the plan, while Nick tries to buy time. Tiana draws attention towards herself and tells everyone that the matches are taking too long to finish, and that they should give all of the problems at once, so that the match ends in just one round and the loser can take all of the penalty punches at once. This surprises everyone, but the public, who is getting bored of the pace, enthusiastically agree, and all the questions are given to both of the players at once. Tiana knows that this is a gamble, as Curran doesn't know how to solve these questions at all, but she does as she was told the night before and starts acting like she knows all of the answers and starts filling out the sheet, which scares Claudine, and even though she could do all the questions herself, she starts doubting her speed and resorts to cheating by using her magic crystal to communicate with the nerd, who is hiding in a clock tower with a calculator. She starts telling him the questions, and he immediately starts telling her all of the answers. Tiana scans the entire area again, and thankfully, this time she's able to spot the nerd far away. She leaves the arena alongside Kazuna and Zem and go over to the watchtower to try and apprehend the nerd. Girl seems to notice that something is off and tries to warn the bitch, but is unable to do so as Nick keeps pushing him by using a bunch of attacks. Tiana and the others reach the tower and capture the nerd, which results in Claudine getting frustrated as she is unable to solve the answers in front of her, losing her cool. Suddenly, Tiana enters the arena alongside a tied-up nerd who simply smiles, while Tiana shows them a magic crystal. The old lady immediately realizes what was happening and disqualifies the other team, calling guards to take them away. Nick and party later go on to the tavern to have dinner and celebrate their victory. That night, they also have earned some extra cash, so Kazuna, Nick, and Tiana decide to go to a casino the next day. Kazuna wants to eat the special ice cream only sold at that particular casino, while Tiana wants to gamble a little bit and Nick is forced to watch over both of them. They enter the casino and Kazuna gets in line to get his ice cream, while Tiana sits down on a table, starting to gamble away with 4 other participants. She starts winning huge sums of money, while Kazuna is disappointed as his favorite ice cream is finished before he can get to try it, and he tells Nick that he would rather leave now, but Nick tells him to watch how people gamble for a bit. While Tiana was playing, however, suddenly, there is a huge ruckus and people start running here and there as a giant tiger monster appears inside of the casino and starts wreaking havoc everywhere. He slaps away all of the guards and ends up cornering Tiana, asking her where Nick is. She suddenly realizes that this huge monster is the girl who they had a battle with the day before, and it turns out that after getting captured, the girl was overwhelmed by his hatred towards Nick and ended up using a special sword of destruction, similar to Kazuna, and escaped the prison. The swords transformed him into a monster and he started following Nick's scent, reaching the casino. He tells her to reveal the location of Nick, but she replies that she doesn't know where he is, and even when he threatens her, she simply gets a lighter out and lights her pipe, smoking, which leaves the tiger man confused. Suddenly, however, she uses the lighter infused with some magic to blast the monster away and starts running with a blue-haired woman who is also stuck. The tiger man, however, heals up quickly and throws a bench at them, which blocks their path and sends them flying. He starts walking towards them while Tiana tells the blue-haired girl's boy toy to take her away. The monster walks up to her and grabs her sword, ready to kill her, but Nick arrives just in time and blocks his attack with the energy sword of his own. The tiger gets even more mad to see him and starts cursing him, before he extracts even more dark powers from the sword and transforms into an even bigger monster. The monster tries to punch Nick, but he elegantly dodges away before Tiana tells him to merge with her so that they can put an end to it. They back off and use the sword's power to merge together into a single being, with an amazing armor and the ability to fly. Tiana uses an ice wall ability, but the kitty goes rogue and blasts through the wall before running astray inside of the casino, breaking everything in its path and throwing people around. Tiana uses an ice prism shield, which captures him inside and starts skewering him with icicles, but he is able to escape from the shield as well. Finally, he is put to rest when Tiana uses some bullshit card throwing tricks, which somehow manage to put him to sleep. I have no idea what just happened here. Anyways, they seal the sword in an ice prison so that it could never be used again. Tiger is taken again to the jail, where Nick visits him a couple of days later, and they both seem to make amends with each other and forget their enmity before Nick tells him to get out of jail soon, so that they can go out for a drink.